Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the very last session in the Denfair speaker series, Easel Project, Painting with Industry. I'm Sandra, I'm the editor at Denfair. And if you've been down the main entranceway, you would have been right past Easel Project Gallery. And if you haven't, you still have a bit of time to check it out before you leave. Today we have the brains behind the project, Marcus Piper, Adam Cornish, along with Emmaline Cox of Axolotl, and Rachel Derham and Adam Goodrum. It's an all-star lineup to talk about this very ambitious collaborative project and what it means. Take it away, guys.
Afternoon. Thanks for coming. I know it is late on the last day of Denfair, so fantastic that you're still here. After we finish this, if you want to come over and have a look, then follow any one of us and we'll show you what this independent initiative that we have invested ourselves into is all about. So the way the Easel project came about was a conversation between Adam Cornish and I, where the phrase painting with industry really sums it up, where we wanted to create a series of artworks that utilised industrial process. So this was a conversation that Adam and I were having for quite some time and weren't quite sure how it was going to pan out. And in introducing how it panned out, I can probably thank all the partners. So Adam had a conversation with Denfair and they've very generously supported what we're doing. We then had a conversation with Axolotl and they have also very generously supported what we're doing. And we'll get to a couple of the other partners in a minute. So all those conversations led to the Easel project. And this week we launched Collection 1. The easel, the whole idea of the easel, Adam, you can explain it.
Okay, so we had one of those serendipitous meetings at an event that was, what was it, Design Made?
Design Made. Yeah,
Design Made with Emery Sargent. And the idea was, what if we could use these beautiful industrial processes that Axolotl do, but kind of, get a bunch of artists and designers on board and see if we could take them outside their normal process and kind of discombobulate them a little bit and hopefully get a different kind of artwork produced. From this, we were like, how can we combine art and design in a... Closer. in a seamless kind of way. So the idea for the easel was to... an easel is a tool that artists have used throughout time. So that's the starting point for it. And we're like, how do we tie it to design? So the idea was if we could give it a function that then ties in all the industrial designers. So the easel actually... Do we have a picture of it transforming?
We will do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a mechanism on the side that's hidden under the graphic that you can simply unscrew, and then the easel folds down to actually be a functional coffee table, kind of fusing the design and the artist together. Yeah. The easel was a collaboration between Forest Furniture and myself. There's been 3 main supporting partners, and Forest Furniture did all the CNCing and hand finishing of the easels. Okay.
There's some fairly heavy componentry inside what looks to be a pretty simple timber easel. And this is where the magic of industrial design comes in to make it work. Do you want to explain how that works?
Yeah, so the easel mechanism is we have a stainless steel rod, like we said, the easel branding on the end, and the simple mechanism there that you can unscrew, fold it down. It's concealed in the branding, gives the easel a dual purpose, and it is the tie between the CNC components you can see in the right and the milled components up in the top right. And this is some of the early, one of the early CNCing stages of making the easel, so just to show the beautiful work that Forest Furniture did on producing the easel. And that's the first fitting of an army of easels.
I'll remind you at this point that this is entirely independent, and that represents part of the investment that we've all made in this, to do something which is, well, what we consider is pretty amazing. So this is us at the shoot, testing out if it works.
Yeah, this is the first testing of the easel before the photo shoot. And I think you can't see my face in this, but I was very happy that it was functioning for the first time.
So the process of generating the artworks was quite complicated. We deliberately curated 8 individual artists and designers, industrial designers, painters, and with Axolotl, we actually did a whole bunch of sampling, process testing, and as we go through, you'll see the finished results. But not everything worked. Like this here, that's Adam Goodrum's fused glass, but it actually turned into bubbles, which is pretty wild.
I wonder, Marcus, is it good to say what Axolotl does as a company? We haven't actually revealed that.
I think that's why we put that slide there, Adam. Right. Well done. Emmaline, would you like to talk about Axolotl?
So Axolotl's a very complicated business. It's quite tricky to explain. We started as a metal finishing company, and that's sort of our original product, I suppose. But then we've basically just worked with designers, industrial, interior architects, and really pushed the boundaries to create new materials and surface treatments based on their briefs or their problems that they're trying to solve. So we've moved from metal through to glass, which we carve and kiln fire, and metal inlay, and we've basically branched all of our different products together. So when we have designers come in, we kind of freak them out by explaining about 1 million different options that they can work within. And it never stops. So we're basically always saying, yeah, we can do it, to a new product or process. So part of the fun of this project was working with artists and designers and explaining what we can do, and then letting their eyes light up at a certain product, and then start talking more to that product with each of the artists and designers, and developing it with them. So everyone has very different practice and very different interests in materials, and it's been really fun to collaborate with all of the different artists and designers to really push the boundaries of what we do, and prototype. And as you can see, we don't stop playing around, so we have produced lots and lots of samples and tests to all the different ideas that the artists come up with. And this is only a snapshot of what we did actually. We've got boxes of it. So, yeah.
And that was the real idea with Easel, to take, we have painters, collage artists, industrial designers, graphic designers, and the idea was to show them the different surface finishes, materials that Axolotl have, and hopefully something sparks their imagination that is a medium they wouldn't normally work in. So that's why we had so many samples and prototypes, because a lot of the artists were working in a new medium for the first time.
So the curation, Adam and I curated the 8 artists. Adam is first. We've done this in alphabetical order always, which is very lucky for Adam Cornish. So Adam Goodrum, who's an industrial designer, Rachel, who is a collage artist, Ham Darrick, who's a painter based in Canberra, Jaime Hayon, who's a Spanish industrial designer who you probably know, Louise Olson, who is a painter and co-founder of Dinosaur Designs, me, and Rachel. Yeah, sorry? Oh, and Belinda Henry, sorry. Yes, Belinda Henry, who's a painter based up on the North Coast. Yeah, like I said, alphabetical order. So here we start talking about the processes. Adam, do you want to talk about your practice?
So my practice, I'm an industrial designer. So for me, a lot of the time that means we have to try to make, products hopefully that are beautiful, functional, using industry. So a lot of what you don't see here is the industrial processes that go into making chairs. Like the chair on the top right involves CNC wire bending, which there's a lot of limitations through what you can and can't do with wire. I think a lot of people look at industrial design products and think, they just drew that, give it to someone and you get what you want. There really is a lot of, knowing the ins and outs of manufacturing have to work around that. And it was kind of that idea that I think gave birth to the Easel project a bit, trying to get people to have to work their way through that experience as well. For my piece, I chose to do a metal mosaic. So I wanted to work with small laser cut tiles of metals, in this case stainless steel. And this is the first experiment of the heat treating of the tiles to create the different colors. So each tile is actually heated to a different temperature to create the colors. The silver there is raw, unheated, and then the darker purples are around the 790 degrees, and then some of the bronzes and coppers are more your 290 and 400 degree mark. So it's all completely heated, not painted at all. It's just a heat oxidization or a tempering of the stainless steel. And this is the final product. So in order to try to showcase the gradient, we tried to do a slightly pixelated gradient working in. So you do have each color starting in the hottest on the outside moving in, but then slightly fragmented and random. So you can see some of the darker colors up against the gold. And I think this was like an interesting project for me because I would never normally work in colors of that kind of iridescence or brightness, and being forced to work within only the spectrum of colors created by heat was kind of a nice limiting factor that I think you get a result that would never have naturally have happened without the process informing the artwork. Yeah. What? Yeah. I'm just waiting for the next slide. One of the difficult things was each tile had to be hand heated, and one of the things we found out through the processes as well, not only do they have to be hand heated individually, you have to turn them 3 times to make sure the heat comes in from each point of the triangle. So there's over 400 triangles on this artwork, so obviously, and we hand heated them in our studio ourselves, so there's a lot of time invested in getting this process just right.
Mr. Goodrum, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. I'm also an industrial designer like Adam Cornish. Conventionally, I guess my studio normally works with commercial kind of furniture, but during high school I sort of fell in love with more of an art direction and thought I might go the fine arts kind of way, and then fell into industrial design because I studied industrial design. So probably for the last 15 years I've worked in industrial design, more commercial furniture projects, working with Australian companies and some overseas companies. But just more recently, done a few kind of limited edition kind of pieces. So to get the call up from these guys to do something which was more heavily art focused, it was a real treat. This is a early sample of my piece. Maybe I should just go back for a second. So I'm based in Sydney, and the factory for Axolotl is in Botany. So the first thing I did was invited to go down to Axolotl and have a look at all these amazing fabrication techniques. And it's kind of when, the guys were saying you can do absolutely anything you want, which is obviously such a treat, but then to sort of see all these incredible different techniques was just overwhelming. And I remember walking around the factory being shown by Chris about this and, falling in love with all these different things and literally being overloaded and not knowing what to do. And then after sort of digesting the brief and that kind of thing, I'd been asked to do a reception desk for, I don't know if you know Hotel in Canberra, and I presented, it was this big glass thing in which I made a little maquette of these acrylic pieces with the same coloured transparent acrylic, and once you lay them over each other you get all these different gradient of colours, and I thought, there's an opportunity. So my piece, really revolves around glass and layers of glass to get different gradients.
Emmaline, how is it done?
So we're one of the only companies left in Australia with a kiln that's about 2 by 4 meters in size, and we fire glass in the kiln bed. So Adam really pushed the limits with this one because we were stacking 6 layers of glass together, and it was all kiln fired over a 2-day process where each layer of glass was melted together to form into one new piece of glass. We did a lot of tests, as you might have seen at the early photos, and wrong temperatures caused the glass to explode, glass to shatter.
Including a full-size.
A full-size piece, yeah. So it was getting a little bit stressful at the end. But after lots of testing and lots of prototyping, we got there. It's a really beautiful piece because the bronze glass and all the transparencies together create such a beautiful illusion. Also had the only piece that had the added challenge of a new way to connect it to the easel base.
How heavy is it? It's quite heavy. It's 30 kilos or something?
It's just on the limit of 40 kilos.
40 kilos,
yeah,
right.
And
The original brief did stipulate under 15 kilos for the tabletop as well,
And then,
which Adam just threw out the window
50
completely.
kilos.
yeah, there was a lot of even the 4 tiny fixing points that connect it to the easel, having to choose a glue that would actually hold the weight, and we ended up with a glue that could hold 4 ton over those 4 fixing points. So that was fun to calculate, so we know it will work. So this was laid up in a kiln of sand and fired over 2 days at sort of around 500 degree temperature as well, ramped down so that it wouldn't, explode during the process. And it was also fired on or tested on lots of different beds as well, because we had the added challenge of trying to get it
the
as
texture
smooth
to
as
make it a bit
possible.
flat.
Yeah, and this is fired on sand, so yeah, it was a lot of fun. Good result.
Yeah, I was thrilled.
Adam, I'm going to let you explain Belinda Henry as co-curator.
Belinda Henry is a landscape artist represented by Australian Galleries and Flinders Gallery as well. Oh, yeah. Yep. Belinda's work is celebrated in, there's a Australian landscape book at the moment with, is Mary Tonkin also. So we wanted to have a painter as well. We tried to have a mixture of design and fine art. So Belinda represents the painters within the collection.
So we definitely challenged Belinda, being a painter, and saying, well, go into this factory and see what you can do with your artwork. And it's quite interesting what she's come up with. So these are sold in editions of 8, these artworks, and she's hand painted using Axolotl paints. Her landscape called Pathway. And the trick about it is that it's got brass within it. So some of the highlights are actually brass. And then there's a frosted textured glass.
Belinda particularly wanted to diffuse her painting and do something that she hasn't done before. So yeah, it's a frosted and kiln-fired glass to the front as well.
And that's the coffee table. Ham Darrick is an interesting character. Anyone see the Sol LeWitt exhibition in Canberra? When was it? Last year? Mm-hmm. Yeah? He installed that. When he's not in Canberra painting, he's in France as Bridget Riley's assistant. And he's a bit of an unknown quantity in Australia, but he's incredible. He works with colour. He's a painter and sculptor. Works with colour and obviously gradients. And I was really intrigued to see what he would do with Axolotl, and it was actually a really cool collaboration, this one. So he hand painted this little triangular pattern in gouache as a colour test and posted it up to Emmaline, and that's what he got sent back as a double-sided glass print. And I was on the phone to him when he saw it. He's like, wow, that's fantastic. It's not what I expected at all, but that's the beauty of collaboration. Do you want to continue?
Yeah, I mean, so Ham came in and we talked about a few different processes. We played with a few different things because the beauty of his work is that he celebrates the white as much as he celebrates the colour, and he likes the way that the white absorbs the colour. So the plan was to try and get the two to play with each other and for the white to almost absorb the colour in a particular way. We played with some solid surface that had resin inlay, and we played with doing gradients to get the colours just by machining at different depths. But in the end, we played with this idea of a double-sided piece of glass that had resin on both faces, and it allowed basically a parallax error between the surface of the glass. So at different angles, it actually appears completely different. It shows the dimension of the artwork. And then it had the added ability to have a solid border around the outside and a section within the middle that could be backlit and would actually reflect on the floor as a coffee table. And it was just magic. Like when you look at this up close, it's really interesting. It's particularly one of the pieces that you have to look at up close. But yeah, op origami was the sort of style of this that he was interested in, playing with the idea of colour and shape and fusing it all together into, or as you can see from his other practice, it's like a lot of repetition. But it was really fun to work on with Ham, and really great to hear his feedback on it.
And you get those unexpected moments where the print actually reflects back off the bottom of the glass. It's quite a nice little piece. Jaime Hayon. So we didn't choose him lightly. We chose all the creatives because they understand how to work with materials, and Jaime in particular. So just briefly, we invited him, and he said yes, which is great. And he hand drew. He initially sent through a vector drawing. And we talked about process and materials, and we got to the point of inlaying brass in marble. And he sent through a vector diagram of what he wanted to do, and we went back and said, no, we want you to draw. So he's done a hand drawing, which we've digitised and then inlaid into marble in brass. And I still don't know how it works.
It's relatively complex, but at the same time quite simple. But the marble is machined to a depth, and this is solid brass that's cut and adhered into the marble, and it's all polished up nice and flush as well. So it's a really neat finish. It's good result as well.
At this point, we should say they're all for sale in an edition of 8. Adam, can you introduce Louise Olsen?
Hey?
No.
I'm not going to do it justice.
Yeah, I don't feel like I can either. Louise Olsen is co-founder of Dinosaur Designs in Sydney. She's an artist in her own right as well, and she does these beautiful paintings. She also designs jewellery, of course, and so we worked with her to explore what her painting would look like on glass. The nice thing is it's formed glass, so the edges are round.
Yeah, this is kiln fired. I think part of the brief is, Dinosaur Designs, and her practice is also working in resin and soft materials a lot of the time. So glass lent itself to it. The form glass gave it the soft edge, and the texture that was, something new to work with for her particularly. And then the piece itself is a painting that's been treated over the glass and colour-backed, and it has a 3D resin texture over the surface as well to represent the canvas that she'd painted on.
The nice thing about this is the way that the work, which is on the top of the glass, casts a shadow on the back and creates a double image again. It's it's a three-dimensional object, so it's got to work in that way. That's me. I like working with Axolotl. I call it heaven. I do a lot of work with them in printing on aluminium and then 3D printing on aluminium, and it's pretty wild stuff. Photographs don't actually capture what goes on. So I've been doing these aluminium prints for a while, and I wanted to do something really different. They'd done some tests in glass, and well, I thought they were pretty nice. So we've kind of pushed the boundaries a bit, haven't we?
Yeah. I guess with everything, especially if you've got the opportunity to work over multiple projects, you can push the boundaries a little bit more each time. So once we worked with glass, we realised that we had the opportunity to play with mirrors and reflective surfaces as well. We also realised that we had the opportunity to polish back through the embossing in really interesting ways and create things that would react on two faces of the glass and allow light to pass through, and really play with the light as well. So Marcus got to, experiment.
To quickly explain the processes behind this, it's a vector artwork which is printed front and back on the glass. Then it's 3D printed on the glass at 7, 14 and 28 layers. Then it's mirror coated, and on the back at the 28 layer mark, the mirror coating is cut off so you can see through it. Simple. So that area up in the top right, that's the mirror coating, the 3D printing, where the mirror over the back of it catches it and creates these little boxes of light. Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a collage artist, so I work with paper to create those images that you see there. Basically, I work with found imagery, so working with magazines, photographs, books, things like that. And basically, I suppose I've been spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to play with, like, making real imagery, like figures and landscapes and things like that, kind of confusingly surreal and yet echoing a kind of reality. The beauty of collage is that there are parameters because, you can only work with what you find, which is quite limiting because, you're forced to sort of work in a particular scale. And I guess I've been spending quite a long time trying to figure out how to make the layers of my collages kind of seamless, which is not that easy to do with glue and scissors and things. So anyway, when I was invited to work on this project, it was kind of like a completely new way of approaching a work for me, because it wasn't going to be working with paper, and also because I wasn't going to be physically creating it, which is a really bizarre thing for an artist when you're used to actually, touching everything and creating everything. So it was exciting. But like you were saying, when we went to Axolotl and we were exposed to the myriad processes and techniques that we could use, it was very overwhelming because it was like, I'm not used to sort of having this just blue sky project where you can do whatever you want, and it's kind of hard to know where to draw the line. So the way I ended up approaching it was I wanted the aesthetic to echo what I do on paper. So I created a collage out of paper, like I normally do. And, well, actually at first I thought, oh, wow, what I could do is, I could make a collage out of all these different materials. Like, I could use marble and brass and glass, and, my brain was just kind of like, I was incredibly excited. But when I spoke to the very wise and helpful Emmaline, she was kind of explaining to me, obviously, that, like, certain materials don't work that well together physically, like, to get that seamless effect that I'd like to get in paper, you can't actually achieve that joining, multiple pieces of marble to glass to brass. So I then had to think about how to create layers using less material, but still to essentially kind of be creating a collage in a different way. So anyway, I selected marble as my major kind of material because I just thought that that'd be such an exciting thing to do to, reflect the moon and the sand dunes that you can see there. And what we ended up doing was I was super excited to be able to make the stars out of brass. That's kind of like, heaven for me. Because I do use a lot of gold paper, and that's kind of like tiny little gold dots. But this was like, that just times a million, yeah. So what we ended up doing was we printed the image of the collage onto the marble, but we did a lot of tests with different levels of transparency. So you can kind of create layers, with layers of printing. So because I wanted the marble to be visible and kind of slightly surreal, a little bit confusing. Like you look at it and you're thinking, oh, is that one piece, or, you know, is the moon the same marble that's the sand dunes? And I think, and even the selection of the marble informed the image a lot, because, you know, the actual marble has such different patterns in each piece. So we sort of went through and chose a particular slab, and then I had to map out the collage onto the slab to figure out, you know, which direction the veins would be going in for the moon and the dunes and things like that. So it was, yeah, really very challenging and really exciting to be able to do.
So that's brass inlaid in marble and then printed.
Yes.
Yeah, and if you have time to have a look afterwards, you get a really beautiful effect when you walk past, you know, mirror polished brass that's inlaid in the marble with the black around it. The stars almost like twinkle like the night sky, so it's quite a special little feature.
I love this one because it just encapsulates the whole project, the collaboration, and, you know, a collage artist working with marble and printing, and you can see the grain of the marble come through the print. It's really beautiful. And that's us.
Thank you very much for listening, guys.
Thank you all for joining us. Thanks, Marcus, Adam, Emmaline, Rachel, and Adam, for our last talk of Denfair. I'm really excited about the sort of prospect of what you've created and how that can be applied further into the future, into other collaborations. And yeah, just give them another round of applause. Thank you so much.